Welcome to the Market Mystics Podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in.
Here we go.
Here we go. Hit me with the topic, Josh.
So, this was something we were talking about just a little bit before we recorded, and then I was looking through my notes and I was like, oh, this connects. We were talking about a podcast that we both listened to recently, and I told you one of the things I appreciate about it is that it challenged the language I would normally use to talk about my faith. And I really like that because I've been getting really tripped up over language lately.
Really?
Because I'm finding in myself a desire, and I don't always do this well, but I'm finding a desire in myself and when listening to others for them to be extremely specific. Because when you're not, it leaves a lot of room that just has to be interpreted. And you may not always interpret it correctly. So like I was thinking about, okay, if everything is frequency and our voices are frequency, and so we're creating by what we're saying, like I want to be very specific about what I'm saying and what other people are saying about situations. So like one area where I saw this recently was in another conversation you and I were having about cryptocurrency with one of our friends. And they shared a clip about a type of digital currency and about Bitcoin. And they were just said, is this true about cryptocurrency? Or that was like what was being posed in the thing they sent.
Yeah.
But to put those two things in the same box are just fundamentally, they don't fit. Like they are both a form of a digital asset. But the way they function, the way they operate, the way they were designed, their purpose, their intent, everything about it is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like finding within me this like really strong desire for things to be as specific as I can make them, because I'm recognizing kind of like the power of creation. And if I'm creating a framework by what I'm saying, I want to create it like, I don't know, like I think of it as like you're making a piece of art, and like your words are the brushstrokes. And so I want to be intentional about what color I'm using and what direction I'm painting. And because if I'm trying to get you to see what I'm creating, like I need more detail, not less detail.
That's an interesting thing. I was having a conversation with another friend. This is going to seem unrelated, but it's related in my brain, regarding different genres of fiction in books and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And how I was saying I can read like a fantasy or sci-fi something every now and then, but it is like a lot of work to have the world built. And then started having this conversation about, isn't it interesting that people who write in that way are essentially like these architects of worlds, where they have to build out every nuance every detail, every hill and valley, so that the person who's reading it then knows exactly what's happening and
Yeah.
understands and can follow along.
Yes.
And I know it sounds unrelated, but it reminds me of what you're talking about, and really like including that detail and being intentional about building that out.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's unrelated. Like it's very much so you just are creating. Like um we were also talking about this before, but like there's a lot of people who are creating with AI at the moment and who are writing books and doing things. And if you have worked with it for any amount of time, you can often you can often hear ChatGPT's voice in social media posts, in news articles, in books. Um,
Titles of podcasts.
yeah,
I mean,
depending on
mhm,
how the person used what ChatGPT gave them.
right.
And like it's obvious. Like it's just obvious. And that's a uh to me it's like you're you're creating like modern art that's just blocks of colors instead of like very like have you seen like I've seen on social media lately these like people who are posting these ancient sculptures where out of stone you're giving muscle tone and like almost movement, and it's like the precision to create this. Or like you and I were talking about an artist that you really like, and it's just like you get lost in it because there's so much.
Mm-hmm.
Like ain't no one getting lost in a modern art studio where there's two colors on a canvas for very long. Like you may like I'm not saying you can't enjoy that and it's not useful. It is a level of art, it is a type of creation, but it is notably different from like fine art where it's the artist's life's work coming onto a canvas rather than something they did in an afternoon. Like,
Yeah, I think I since we're talking about AI and um, this intentionality you've been having, I think it's actually a really important time for this, because like AI came out and all of a sudden it's this really fun thing to play with and try to figure out and like let it write a poem for you or whatever it is that you're letting AI do. And we talked about this years ago on this show, but it's so important to like, if you're going to use it, utilize it as a tool.
mm,
And it's so important to not lose your own voice within what you're having it do for you, because all of a sudden you'll wake up one day and find that you don't have a voice anymore that anyone can recognize.
yeah,
And so I respect highly what you're doing and like the intentionality of putting so much of you and your vision and what you have and like intentionally creating with words, with descriptors, with what you're putting out, because you're putting your essence into it. And
mm,
that's something that AI can't quite do. Like
right,
we've talked about this. I was talking about writing a book with AI, and essentially like here's all this content that has been made for years. I mean, if we're talking about our podcast, we're over 3 years now we've been making all of this content, and our voices really shine through in that, and you'll really find some common threads and understand what we believe and where our journey has taken us in the last 3 years. But if I was to do that and allow AI to simply write it and then put my name on it, it would be so obvious, because the voice, the essence of who we are, would have been missed in that. Now, if you allow it to help build framework, and then you go through and you still make it you, I think that's different.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a way to utilize the tools that are currently at our hands in a beautiful way.
Right.
And there is a way to just let it give you words.
Right. Overtake the thing that is essentially you.
Yes.
I mean, the same argument could have been made about when people stopped writing by hand and started typing instead. You lose a piece of the person's personality and kind of who they are and part of this essence. However, we didn't allow the typewriter or the keyboard to overtake, hopefully, some of us. I mean, we could get a let's get weird episode out of this really easily. Overtake the essence of who we are. The same with graphic art. My dad was in advertising and marketing and illustration, art, those kinds of things, all of his career. And he started with hand lettering things and hand illustrating things. And if there's a gradient, he either drew it or he airbrushed it. Like it was all done by hand. And the transition into digital art and doing things in Photoshop felt like cheating.
Yeah.
And he has some friends who still never made the move and now have a really hard time keeping up with what's going on. I think there's a difference between utilizing the tools and advancing and utilizing the tools and losing your voice.
Yeah. No, I think that's totally true. I think it's so cool to hear dad's transition or dad's use of those tools. My grandma used to do Photoshop for a photographer before Photoshop was a thing. Like she would edit photos by hand.
Fun.
And very fine detail work, literally repainting a photo. And so it's really like, it's cool to see how far we've come and that we can keep some of our essence even through the change. But you might have to work a little more at it, like especially with Chat GPT, especially with AI, because it's tempting to allow it to be the voice. Like even with like autocorrect, like if you're using a word processor like Microsoft Word, Google Docs to write something and it's suggesting what to say next, even though it may convey a similar message, it's likely not how you would have said it.
Right.
And so like there's a temptation to not say something exactly the way you would have said it with technology because it's suggesting a way. And there doesn't need to be a nefarious reason behind it. Like it doesn't have to be a conspiracy or a weird thing.
Right.
It just simply is saying this is what's most commonly used after this makes grammatical sense. But you are choosing to give up part of your voice in doing that in a very small way. ChatGPT offers it in a much larger way. And I think as we continue down the path with technology, you might have to consciously give yourself a voice more than you ever have. And maybe that's what people are really enjoying about podcasts, because like I know when podcasts first started, people were like, nobody wants a 2 hour long episode. Like no one's going to listen to your 40 minutes, your 30 minutes, whatever it is. And now like long form podcasts are one of the major like sources of information in the world, especially the Western world.
Yeah, for sure. I think this episode is not meant to go this way, but I think that's an interesting transition. Even just talking about going from the written word by hand to a typewriter, keyboard.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden you have social media and keyboard warriors and like people being people they wouldn't be in like real life, like
Yeah.
looking face to face. But then you have the rise of the podcast, which is it's interesting in the time of like the awakening to kind of what's happening in media and not people not feeling like they can put their full trust in that, but also not looking to the written word
Mm.
for all of that either, but needing that connection. And I wonder if some of the pandemic stuff with all of the like separation that happened, if that really sparked something to make it blow up because
Mm.
people are really longing for that human connection.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, I mean, your voice carries a frequency and that can be lost through a keyboard or through even the written word. A text message, how many times have you sent a text and it came off a way that you didn't mean it,
Mm.
because it's left up for interpretation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even with like texting, we added emoticons so that we could like express our feeling, but even that you're limited in, like, you might put the laughing face, but that's you likely weren't laughing, crying. You likely just smiled, maybe breathed a little more air out of your nose than normal. Like,
Oh, that's funny. For the record, I sent you something on Instagram last week. I'm pretty sure I sent it to you. And it probably had a laughing, crying emoji that went along with it. And I was literally laughing until I was like sobbing, laughing,
that's
like
amazing.
uncontrollably. I'm in a room by myself. Everybody else had already gone to bed. And I'm just like in the living room, like I couldn't control it. And so I was like, I must share this with people who also really like to laugh. So I will just say in that one instance, I'm usually the person who just like laugh or like breathes a little more through my nose, like,
Right.
it's funny. But in that instance, I was actually crying laughing.
That's great. Now I'm curious, want to go back and look and see if you sent something that was that funny.
I think I said it to you. I don't know why I wouldn't.
You
You've
probably did.
probably
You
seen
probably
me
did.
laugh
I
till I
just
cry
don't
more than
remember.
most people.
I'm grateful for that. Those are the best times to laugh until you cry.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess just to like put a bow on this, I I'm just finding that I don't want to lose the art of language. I don't want to lose um the like specific things, the specific words that really convey what you mean. Like we're in such an age where it is very easy to just communicate lightly, and broadly. But as a creator, I want people to be very specific. Like, yeah,
I like
that's my
that.
hope.
How I like that you said that, but I need to ask, how do you how are you outworking that? And how can others do the same?
One thing that I'm trying, and this just comes natural, I love researching things. So that just comes natural. So, like, if I'm having a thought or I hear someone talk about it, I immediately want to look it up so that I like have a better picture of what's being conveyed. Um, but one thing that I'm trying to do personally with that is to just not have an opinion on everything.
Hmm.
Um, because there is a there is something, I think probably social media encourages this, to just have an opinion on everything that happens. And it's impossible for you to understand the nuances about the things that happen and are involved in any decision or any event, like for everything that happens. Like it's impossible. And so instead of just being like, oh, this is what I think about this, like actually stopping and thinking about it and looking up more than one source, and like that's one thing I'm doing, is just like being okay not having an opinion on things, not needing to share an opinion or a gut reaction to something. Like, there's the day we're recording this, there was a plane crash that happened, and the plane departed from the city that we live in. And my whole social media feed is just full of opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe by the time this episode's released, there's more information on what actually happened. And uh, maybe we will have more details, but I can tell you there's no shortage of opinions about what happened. But none of those people actually know.
Right. Right. It's like the snap judgment.
Right. But in 2 weeks, or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, when the NTSB finishes their investigation and they have the black box recordings from both things, and they have all of the information that is available to them, and they have analyzed it and run it through simulators and done all their testing, like like then there will, like, the news cycle will be dead for it. Like there might be a blurb, might be a second page thing, like, but
When there's
because it
actual facts.
yeah, but because it's like right now it's the thing, it's so hot, it's everywhere. um and it's like it's a tragic event. um and so I'm like, it's not that people don't need to have an opinion on it, but maybe they shouldn't have an opinion on how it happened, why it happened. Maybe your thoughts and prayers should just be for the people involved and the people working on dealing with it, um, rather than making judgment calls about how it happened.
Hmm. That's interesting. In the conversation before this, we also talked about my opinions on this.
I know. We talked about my opinions on it too.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's that you can't work it out. I just think um, you just have to, like, uh, I want to hold things loosely, like until I can
For
articulate
sure.
it well.
I think that's fair. I think that's, I mean, honestly, Josh, I think that's kind of what we're doing with our journey that we're on, like this spiritual journey that we talk about every week, right?
Yeah.
Publicly. Go back and listen, because 3 years ago, we may have said things that we don't still hold as truth, but at the
Mhm.
time it was.
Yeah.
Except that, I mean, I'd like to think that I hold things loosely enough that the Lord can continue to mold it and form it into what he needs it to be at any given moment.
Yeah.
Um, and that might be a little abrasive to a standard religion, but that's not what we're operating in here. Honestly, I think, Josh, I think we're looking for freedom,
Mhm.
and we're seeking truth. And I think those things aren't always as concrete as we'd like to make them be.
For sure. For sure. It changes my opinion, my thought, my truth gets uh, shifted with every conversation I have. Not every, I mean, often with conversations I have, with things that I learn, with experiences I go through. Life just becomes fuller, um, more full. Um, and like, one of my favorite things about life is the diversity of life. Like, I love eating different foods with different spices. I love traveling to different places that look and feel and sound different and talking with people who have different experiences. That's what makes life beautiful, is differences.
Yeah.
And I don't want a suggested text life. Like, I don't want it to all look the same. I want you to shine through.
Yeah.
Even if I don't agree with what shines through, like, I still want that.
I agree. I do. This just makes me really curious to see how this season unfolds. Because already it feels different.
It does.
And
it's only our second episode.
I know, but I like that. I like it. I like that things are continually changing and shifting according to where we might be and where we might be going.
Yeah.
We may not have the whole roadmap, but it's fine. We're working it out.
We are.
Good stuff. Josh, thanks for bringing the topic.
Yeah, thank you. We'll see you guys next Monday. Thanks for tuning in to the Market Mystics. If you are hungry for more, don't miss out on our exclusive bonus content available only to YouTube members. Demystify the world of cryptocurrency in the cryptosphere and explore everything from outrageous conspiracies to curious current events and out there spiritual musings. Nothing is off limits in Let's Get Weird. Become a channel member on YouTube to unlock these extra episodes. See you in the bonus episodes.